What's up, guys? This is Chris from DraftDashboard.com.
Here are my DFS picks for NFL playoffs, divisional round,
Millionaire Maker. These picks apply for DraftKings and FanDuel. Before I get started, please drop a like on this video and hit that red subscribe button
and hit that bell icon
so you don't miss our new videos.
Okay guys, this is for the Millionaire Maker slate, which is the 4-game contest that starts on Saturday and runs through Sunday.
Oh, and stick around to the very end of this video after I show you all my picks in the Draft Dashboard tools. I'll show you these players in DraftKings and in FanDuel, the Millionaire Maker slates. There'll be 2 spots open that you have to fill in, but you'll have a great Millionaire Maker core.
Okay guys, let's take a look at the quarterback position. My Millionaire Maker quarterback, it's not Patrick Mahomes, even though he's a fine Millionaire Maker quarterback, but you gotta spend up for Patrick Mahomes. He's $8,000 DraftKings salary, probably worth every dollar of that salary, but I'm gonna save a ton of salary here at the quarterback position because the variance in the quarterback scoring isn't as big as the other positions, and I think this guy can get you 20 plus fantasy points here in this matchup. He's super low salary, so my Millionaire Maker quarterback is Baker Mayfield from the Cleveland Browns playing the Kansas City Chiefs, who have a middle-of-the-pack defense overall, and they give up the 11th most fantasy points to opposing quarterbacks. Baker Mayfield has averaged 16.7 fantasy points per game on the season, getting an average of 3.4 rush attempts per game. He scored 23 fantasy points last game. He had 5 rush attempts. Now, he's only going to be about 6% owned. So in the Millionaire Maker contest, you want low ownership players to differentiate your lineup, and this is a nice place to do it right here at the quarterback position. Baker Mayfield is projected at 17.2 fantasy points here in the divisional round of the playoffs. He's $5,300 DraftKings salary and $2,100 more on FanDuel. So I love that DraftKings price. Vegas thinks there's going to be 56 points scored in this game, with the Cleveland Browns trailing by 9.5. So not only do you get a super high scoring game, but you get a passing game script, as Baker Mayfield will probably have to throw the ball all game long. It's a decent matchup here. The Kansas City Chiefs don't have a fantastic pass defense. You're getting him at low salary and low ownership, and we saw he played well in the playoffs last week. So I like Baker Mayfield here versus the Kansas City Chiefs. Okay, let's take a look at the running back position. My Millionaire Maker running back is Aaron Jones from the Green Bay Packers playing the LA Rams, who have a good defense overall, and they've been good versus opposing running backs, but Aaron Jones has averaged 19.1 fantasy points per game on the season, getting an average of 14.4 rush attempts per game and 4.5 pass targets per game. He scored 19 fantasy points last week off of 11 rush attempts and 5 pass targets. And he's only going to be about 13% owned, projected at 17.9 fantasy points here in the divisional round of the playoffs. He's $6,800 DraftKings salary and $1,000 more on FanDuel. Vegas thinks there's going to be 45.5 points scored in this game, with the Green Bay Packers favored by 6.5. So I think that ownership is a little bit too low for Aaron Jones. I know it's not a great matchup, but I see the Green Bay Packers taking the lead early in this game, and I see Aaron Jones getting a ton of work. He's productive off of minimum touches. He gets plenty of pass targets. So I like Aaron Jones here versus the LA Rams. Now I also really like Cam Akers because he's only $5,700 DraftKings salary and $1,300 more on FanDuel, and he got 28 rush attempts last game and scored 29 fantasy points. Oh, and he had 2 pass targets. So 30 touches last week, but I do worry that the Rams fall behind in this game, and then Cam Akers is game scripted out of this one, where they have to go to Robert Woods or their other pass catchers playing from behind. But I like the salary, and he's going to be about 34% owned, so he's going to be a chalk running back, and he's got a great matchup. The Green Bay Packers give up the 5th most fantasy points to opposing running backs, so I do like Cam Akers here versus the Green Bay Packers.
Real quick, guys, I got great news. For a limited time, we're offering a full 30-day trial to Draft Dashboard. This is a great time to get in and try everything for 1 month. The tools are all about saving research time. You can see the last 3 games, the fantasy points per game, the targets they got per game, so you can see how involved they are in the offense, the rushes they got per game. Seeing all this stuff on one screen helps you save time and make better picks. Oh, and if you're tired of doing research every day, we just added a cheat sheet that shows hand-picked plays for the slate. No confusing stat lines, no headaches, just a simple cheat sheet that shows the absolute best players for your lineups.
Okay, let's take a look at the wide receiver position. My Millionaire Maker wide receiver is Michael Thomas from the New Orleans Saints playing the Tampa Bay Bucks, who have a good defense overall, and they give up the 13th most fantasy points to opposing wide receivers. Michael Thomas has averaged 12.8 fantasy points per game on the season, getting an average of 7.9 pass targets per game. He scored 18, 16, and 23 fantasy points in the last 3 games off of 7, 8, and 11 pass targets. He's going to be about 27% owned, projected at 16.9 fantasy points here in the divisional round of the playoffs. He's 6,700 DraftKings salary and 500 more on FanDuel. So I like that price on both sites. Vegas thinks there's going to be 51.5 points scored in this game, with the Saints favored by 3. So you got a pretty high scoring game here and a close competitive game. Michael Thomas looked good last week. He's fully healthy. He's good to go. He's low salary. So I like Michael Thomas here versus the Tampa Bay Bucks. Now, although Michael Thomas is my Millionaire Maker pick, I think it makes a lot of sense to pair up Jarvis Landry with Baker Mayfield. So I like Jarvis Landry from the Cleveland Browns playing the Kansas City Chiefs, who have a middle-of-the-pack defense overall, and although they've been pretty good versus opposing wide receivers, Jarvis Landry has averaged 12.7 fantasy points per game on the season, getting an average of 6.7 pass targets per game. He scored 20 fantasy points last week off of 8 pass targets. He's going to be about 15% owned, projected at 13.3 fantasy points here in the divisional round of the playoffs, and he's only 5,600 DraftKings salary and 1,300 more on FanDuel. So again, I like this pick because Vegas thinks this is going to be a super high scoring game. 56 points scored in this game, with the Cleveland Browns trailing by 9.5. So this is going to be a passing game script for Baker Mayfield, and Jarvis Landry should get a ton of pass targets in this one. So I like Jarvis Landry here versus the Kansas City Chiefs. Okay, moving on to the tight end position. My Millionaire Maker tight end is Mark Andrews from the Baltimore Ravens playing the Buffalo Bills, who have a middle-of-the-pack defense overall, and they give up the 7th most fantasy points to opposing tight ends. Mark Andrews has averaged 12.2 fantasy points per game on the season, getting an average of 6.3 pass targets per game. He scored 8, 7, and 14 fantasy points in the last 3 games off of 6, 7, and 11 pass targets. He's going to be about 21% owned, projected at 12.9 fantasy points here in the divisional round of the playoffs. He's 5,000 DraftKings salary and 1,600 more on FanDuel. Vegas thinks there's going to be 50 points scored in this game, with the Baltimore Ravens trailing by 2.5. So you got a great tight end matchup here. A close, competitive game where the Baltimore Ravens may find themselves playing from behind. You're going to save a ton of salary on Mark Andrews compared to Travis Kelce, although Travis Kelce is worth spending up for if you have the money. But I like Mark Andrews here versus the Buffalo Bills. Now, although Mark Andrews is my Millionaire Maker tight end pick, if you are strapped for cash, you're looking to save some salary, and you want to stack a little bit more exposure onto Baker Mayfield, take a look at Austin Hooper from the Cleveland Browns playing the Kansas City Chiefs, who have a middle-of-the-pack defense overall, and they give up the 6th most fantasy points to opposing tight ends. Austin Hooper has averaged 8.7 fantasy points per game on the season, getting an average of 5.4 pass targets per game. Take a look at his last 3 games. He scored 18, 14, and 14 fantasy points in the last 3 games off of 11, 5, and 15 pass targets. He's only going to be about 11% owned. He's projected at 8.7 fantasy points here in the divisional round of the playoffs, but I think he's going to score at least 10 fantasy points in this one. I think he's going to get double-digit fantasy points here, and he's only $3,800 DraftKings salary and $1,700 more on FanDuel. So I love that DraftKings price. Low ownership, high-scoring game, passing game script, a great tight end matchup. So you can stack Jarvis Landry and Austin Hooper with Baker Mayfield. That's a 3-man stack in a passing game script in a high-scoring game, and you're going to save a ton of salary for the rest of your lineup. So I like Austin Hooper here versus the Kansas City Chiefs.
If you want to try all these daily fantasy tools for yourself, click the link in the description below this video, or just go to draftdashboard.com. You can use our DFS lineup optimizer to build quality lineups using our picks and your own custom player pool. Click the link in the description below this video and try all these daily fantasy tools right now. Thanks so much for watching. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel and hit that bell icon so you can get instant updates whenever we post a new video. You
Okay
unlock
guys,
the bonus
here we
content.
are in the DraftKings lineup optimizer. Over here on Draft Dashboard, we have our Millionaire Maker core locked in here, and we've generated a lineup. So let's see who we got. We got Baker Mayfield, Aaron Jones, Cam Akers, Michael Thomas, Jarvis Landry, Robert Woods, Mark Andrews, Chris Godwin, and the Ravens defense. So what a stacked lineup we have here, guys. Studs all over the place. So I love this lineup, so I'm going to save it so I can optimize it later. Okay guys, here we are in the FanDuel lineup optimizer. Over here on Draft Dashboard, we have our Millionaire Maker core locked in here, and we've generated a lineup. So let's see who we got. We got Baker Mayfield, Alvin Kamara, Aaron Jones, Jarvis Landry, Cole Beasley, Michael Thomas, Mark Andrews, Austin Hooper, and the Ravens defense. Now look guys, this is a contrarian lineup because we're stacking 2 tight ends here, Austin Hooper and Mark Andrews, but this is the 3-man stack I was talking about earlier in the video. Although I think I prefer this 3-man stack on DraftKings, it works here over here on FanDuel. We got Baker Mayfield, Jarvis Landry, and Austin Hooper all stacked in the same lineup. And then that allows us to get to Alvin Kamara and Michael Thomas. Now we don't have any Tampa Bay Bucks in this lineup, so let's go see if we can fit a Tampa Bay Buck in as wide receiver. Antonio Brown, but now we got to save $400 salary here. We'd have to go down to the Browns defense. This is a super contrarian lineup here. Everyone's going to be stacked on the Kansas City Chiefs, but it's possible they have a low scoring game. or their fantasy points are spread out between all their players, so none of those guys have monster games. So this is an interesting lineup here. Let me go over it one more time. We're using the full $60,000 salary. We have Baker Mayfield, Alvin Kamara, Aaron Jones, Jarvis Landry, Antonio Brown, Michael Thomas, Mark Andrews, Austin Hooper, and the Browns defense. So not many people are going to be playing the Cleveland Browns defense, but we saw that they can get some tipped balls, they can get some fumble recoveries, and score touchdowns. And even if the other team scores a bunch of points, they can still be the highest scoring defense. So I think that's a sneaky pick to save some salary and allow you to get all these other guys in your lineup. Kamara, Thomas, Mark Andrews, Antonio Brown. So I like this lineup, so I'm going to save it so I can optimize it later.
Thank you so much for watching, everyone. If you enjoyed this video, please smickety smash that like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Oh, and please comment below with your favorite player for this NFL slate. I love to hear what you guys have to think. Thanks again, and good luck.